or?
Do you want to wait or?
Yeah, we can get started. Okay, so hi everyone. I think we know each other, most of us, all of us, and we know Chris as well. Hey, Chris. Yeah. So, for those of you that don't know, Chris was recently promoted to architect. Yay! So we had to say something about you.
This is all about Chris.
Yes, actually, but Chris is Chris and Amanda and Janine because they're sitting there. So whoever chose to sit here, Richard, you were this close. Okay, so if you don't have my personal details, it's there. I'm Martin Cronje pretty much everywhere, and then that's my email address. Really easy to remember. And so the talk today is the most undervalued important thing. And the way it came about was a few people came to me when they heard that I'm resigning or have resigned, that, hey, it would be cool if you do a brown bag before you leave. I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do a brown bag before I leave. I'm like, okay, well, what should this brown bag be about? And the sheik said, well, whatever it is, it should be like a drop the mic moment. I'm like, okay, fuck, drop the mic moment. No big expectations at all. And like I was at a loss. I was like, what the fuck do you actually speak about as like a drop the mic moment? And that's super important for everyone. And so I was on a bike ride the one morning, decided, well, I'll go for a long bike ride because I can. And that's a photo from one of my bike rides. And usually a bike ride involves a bunch of people that I don't know. Some of them are grumpy, many of them aren't. And it usually involves riding out at 5 or 6 in the morning, sometimes in rain, but usually a lot of great scenery, and usually for a few hours. And that's my bike. Hi, bike. Hi, everyone. You've met my bike now. We can be friends. But this time around, I went on a bike ride, and throughout the bike ride, a solo bike ride, which I like because I can think quite a lot and think about problems and think about talks. I realized that this should be the most important thing that I think is important for you as a software development professional at MYB going forward. So some parting words. But I had this whole deep, long conversation throughout my bike ride. So I'll share some photos as we go through the conversation. They've got nothing to do with the talk other than being pretty. And they'll just remind me about the stuff that we need to chat about. But it was like a solo ride, usually early in the morning. And I asked myself, well, what is the really important thing? What is the one thing that all of you guys should do? The one thought that came to my mind was that, well, one problem is a lot of the people that probably should attend the session won't. And that is important, right? And the one thought that I had was, well, maybe the single most important thing is growth. Growth around improving yourself as a professional through things like improvement Fridays or code cards or going to conferences or stuff like that. And I thought, well, that is important. It's maybe not the most important, but it is something that's worthwhile being important. So is that something that you do in your team? And okay, now part of this is going to be a conversation, right? Is growth and personal growth something that you value in your team? Some nods? Yes? One person actually said a word. Right?
Maybe we value it individually, but as a collective, we don't really get to express that to each other.
Why not?
Constraints,
What constraints?
invisible pressure.
Invisible pressure. So is pressure stopping you from learning?
Well, from taking the opportunity and creating learning moments.
Okay. Does that echo with everyone?
Yes.
Some yes, some no. Let's hear the yes. Let's hear the no. Who wants to go first?
I'm going to say this company facilitator right now tries to facilitate that, gives the developer path, career path thing, which you can use if you really want to grow. And your managers, they kind of encourage you to do that. So all you need to just take what you're given and use it.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and someone said no. There, ish.
We have to work.
We have to work. Yes, we do.
Well, at least in our team, we certainly take any opportunity to share knowledge and grow each other. But it's always incidental to the work done. It's not necessarily what an individual needs at the time in their specific growth path. The intention's always to help, but there's a very big difference in what grows the team, because the team's focused on doing the work, and what grows the individual, because their growth is focused on doing their career. Right?
Yeah. So that is a statement that conflicted me quite a lot, is that the whole thing about your growth isn't necessarily what your team needs from you. I'd argue that you need to do a bit of work to try and figure out how to align that. Maybe your number one thing isn't what the team needs right now, but maybe your number 2 or 3 or 4 item is. The reality is we're software development professionals, and as part of software development, this industry is changing all the time. It's also wildly misunderstood, and part of that is because people don't invest enough time into their growth. A good example is UML. People think UML sucks. It's actually the application of UML that sucks. Or whatever that list of myriad of things is that we've written off over the years. So growth is critically important. And to create an inclusive working environment where people can grow, a part of that is actually creating a space for people to grow in their day-to-day. So as a professional software developer, I will, when I say software developer, I actually include analysts and QAs and all of that, and dev leads and all of that. I see myself as a developer. It is actually your duty to grow. And the only time where you're really able to be in a position where you say, I shouldn't grow, is where you can truly say, I am the best developer on earth, or the best QA on earth. And there's nothing more that I can learn in an industry that is rife with learning, right? It seems like a fallacy. But still, that's not the most important thing for me. So maybe it's process improvement. Now, what do I mean by process improvement? That is getting into a room once a week and looking at the way that work works within your team and reflecting on how you should improve. Not your interpersonal relationships, right? That's one thing, and that should feature in a team in its journey, but actually looking at the way that you work and trying to improve that. Is that something that you do? Okay. Show of hands, how many of you look at data in your retros? Look at data in your retros? Sometimes? Okay. That is a massive opportunity for growth, right? Is to look at data in your retros. Because I would assume if you're not looking at data, you're saying something didn't work this week. Maybe I didn't have a good conversation with someone. And maybe a lot of your conversations are anchored more in the people side of things and not so much in the real hard process and delivery side of things. So is there something stopping you from actually improving your processes?
That was exactly what we were talking about today at our retro.
Yeah?
Something that I brought up. Yeah, because I've seen the general pattern of MYOB to be facilitate retros and really anchor us towards talking about emotions and how the team dynamics went, rather than looking at the velocities and what did we actually achieve.
Yeah.
And why did we not achieve what we
It's a problem. It is a major fucking problem. Okay. Right. So is there something stopping you from doing that today? Like as a professional software person? Is it important?
Process kills productivity.
Well, maybe part of your retrospective should be to identify the parts of your process that is killing your productivity. But do you know what productivity means in your team? Are you able to quantify it? The one thing I think MYB does well is the leaders at MYB are trying to not impose measures of this productivity type of measurements into teams, because the moment we do that, then you'll just change your behavior to follow. So this is more about you as team members trying to say, hey, what can we try and visualize to understand how we can do things better? Yeah? Is there value in looking at that? No? Everyone?
Sure there is.
Okay.
I think we've tried to. It's not always apparent when something needs improvement. And sometimes it's hard to figure out what needs improvement. We've had an experiment running for a few months now in our team where we try to have at least one experiment that is supposed to improve a process every week, and we've stagnated because we just can't think of what to do. We're kind of used to our existing process. We're fairly productive as it is.
Yeah.
If we're in a rut or if we're doing well, but what do you improve?
You touch on two things. Is at some stage the improvements taper off. Those are usually good times to get external people involved. Sometimes you're also good enough, right? I would say there's always room for improvement, but sometimes it does stabilize. Okay. I expected this to be a lot more interactive. So I'm going to do something. Talk to the people that's sitting close to you about some of the improvements that you're making in your teams right now. Okay. And suddenly people were engaged. So maybe, as someone pointed out on Slack, maybe communication is the most important. Anything? So who here is talking about experiments that are currently running? A few? Yeah. What were you guys chatting about? Sorry? Technical improvements? Okay.
We were chatting about becoming more independent as a unit and not being a subset of something else.
Okay.
You're gonna miss me.
Yeah.
For PA.
Okay.
Brainchild from Wavy?
Any?
Team 42.1 is running the popcorn board. It's the same as Homeload's doing. So we're doing well. So after the team health check, so we got lots of card around that board.
Yeah.
So like we are doing the test acceptance test criteria. We got lots of experiments and
Yeah.
the engineers doing like the slicing or
There's been a lot of cases where teams have made improvements, at least like I can mention over the last 6 months, where it was how 42.1 is doing planning, or maybe how Rogue's doing planning, or how some people are approaching collaboration. So there's always improvements going on. I think it is one of the most important things around software development is to continuously adapt our processes. The one thing that is probably missing is to support that with more data. Data that you use individually that help you see problems or problem areas, or to see whether or not an experiment is helpful. Okay. Who does a lot of experiments regularly in their teams around the process? Show of hands? Okay. So that's something you could explore, is just experimenting a bit more. But I don't think that is the most important thing about software development or software development at MYB. The other thing was a conversation that I had with Ashik a few weeks back around refactoring and incremental improvements. And what I mean by refactoring is whenever you touch the code, you make it better. You maybe remove that NuGet package that's been like a thorn in your side for months and months and months or years, where you make a small improvement to your build. So, show of hands, who does that regularly? Who does that all the time? Okay. 50%? Let's really be serious about our hands up. Like, give it some conviction. So who's actually doing this? It's not enough. It's not enough. No, well, I'm talking about your team, right?
Oh yeah.
So we actually don't want Richard. I'm just kidding. So
Does it work if you add bad things at the same rate?
not something I would mention in a public forum like this. Okay.
It's an improvement with 0 rate.
So who regularly commits code where you've deleted code? Regularly. Okay, that's a little bit better. 50%. Okay, so both of those instances, making incremental improvements and deleting a lot of code, that should be at 100%, right? Because we're professional software developers. If we don't clean up our code as we go along, we will find ourselves in a position where it is painfully hard to clean our code up. That's just a fact of life. It is your duty as a developer and as in a development team, I'm using that as a blanket statement, to make sure that you continuously improve your technology stack. But that is hard, isn't it? Why?
Because you have to balance it with actual event line work.
Okay.
I think maybe that's a misconception that technical is totally different from adding value.
Yeah, you touch on something there.
Budget.
Value.
It is different.
We have Janine saying, well, maybe it is different from maybe functional is a budget thing and technical isn't a budget thing. Is that sort of like what you meant? Okay.
There's also like, you know, the big word is pragmatism. At some point you start thinking, is it pragmatic to do this now or not? And a very easy habit to gain and get into is like, it's not pragmatic to do this now, but I'm not interested in doing this unless I can do the whole improvement. You know?
Yeah.
And you lose sight of the fact that a technical improvement is just like any other piece of work that should be sliced up.
Okay.
And we often like just miss out these opportunities for making improvements that we only realize later on because we're like, oh, it didn't make sense then for whatever arbitrary reason.
Something else that happens as well. The first time we come across that problem, it's like, oh fuck, this sucks. The second time we come across that problem, it's like, this sucks. The third time, it's like, oh, this sucks. The fourth time is like, oh, this is life, right? So, yeah. Then you've just gotten used to the fact that it's shit, and you live with it. And then it's sort of like, yeah, but it's been like that all the time, and we're living with it as it is. But the thing is, you're living with 1,000 of those things all the time. So again, I think it's pretty important to do technical improvements. Is there anything that stops you from doing them?
Features are too big.
Feature delivery?
Things are too big.
Things are too big, improvements are too big. There's books written about making them smaller. So I go back to the growth point. Anything else? The feature delivery, I'll touch. Sorry?
External dependencies.
External dependencies. Feature delivery, I'll touch on a bit later. I think I'll touch on that a bit later as well. Anyone else? By the way, the refactoring book edition 2 is about to be released. And it's in JavaScript, and they've tried to move away from object orientation. So edition 3 will be, the goal is more agnostic. Edition 2 is sort of like somewhere in the middle. So that is one of the books that you should read. It's just like, period. Okay. So the other part is feedback, right? Now feedback happens on many levels. One is interpersonal feedback. It's cool photos, don't you think? You should get into cycling. They're Aurelian.
The most important thing is cycling.
Yes, of course. So feedback, right? Feedback loops. Whether that's interpersonal feedback, telling your manager that he or she sucks, or is doing something sucky, or telling your peers that they're doing something sucky or awesome, right? Having that feedback is really, really important for you to have a healthy team. And a lot of us fail on the side of either doing too much of it, too aggressively, or not doing it at all, right? So help each other get it right.
That's difficult though.
It is insanely difficult.
Give it too much and then suddenly you ask yourself if you're sounding like an asshole all the time.
Yeah,
The calendar and performance reviews is next week.
yeah,
And then there's the other thing where you just keep quiet and you try and give people the opportunity to experience something and learn from that and see the value in making that change.
Yeah.
So I think that balance is like totally difficult. I mean, we had a conversation about being too passionate about something and coming across as arrogant.
passion is a horrendously difficult and dangerous emotion because it's as good as it can be bad.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I struggle with. Is like when giving feedback and being passionate about what I feel should happen or what I have experienced. It's difficult because you could be perceived as the bad person.
Yeah.
Then you get feedback on it.
Putting it out there.
Like now, no, I'm just kidding. No, but like it's something to invest in. It's not going to take you a year to do it. It's not going to take you 5 years to do it. You'll be pretty good if you manage to get that right within 10 years. The earlier you start in your career, the quicker you'll get over that. And some of you do it naturally, and people like me just suck at it. So just invest in it. But feedback loops generally is important, right? There's feedback loops in our process improvements. Sorry, our process improvements. There are feedback loops in our technical improvements. And then there are feedback loops in our people systems as well. So is that something that you aspire to within your teams? Show of hands. That you try and implement all the time. Brilliant, like 95% of you. Awesome. That is important because all this other stuff helps with this. Well, all this other stuff comes into life when you have this. Is anything stopping you from doing this? No. Build systems, test runners, production monitors, those one-on-ones with your manager. No. Okay. So, a few of you mentioned value. And I think we're getting close to what I believe is that number one thing. A few of us said that a lot of these things, these process improvements, these technical improvements, growth, all of that stuff comes at the cost of value. Who agrees? Depends.
Depends who's defining that.
Yeah. It's long term or short term.
Depends on the perspective.
Okay, so which perspectives are at play?
If you're asking a bookkeeper who's logging into practice online and she has nothing there, like technical improvements and tech debt is not helping us. There's no
Okay.
value in it.
What are we paid for?
To give Debbie the bookkeeper what she wants.
Yeah. To help businesses succeed. I think it's the first time I've actually said that in a talk. And it's on video. Luckily I'm not here in 2 days' time. So, right, we're paid to help businesses succeed. So how do we do that? By just delivering as many features as possible, irrespective of how good the quality is? No.
And the rate of delivery depends on our technical stage.
Yeah.
The rate of delivery heavily depends on the technical
So frequent delivery.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, someone else said something?
Solving the right problem.
Solving the right problems. Right? Why is it important to solve the right problems?
Because solving the wrong problems doesn't add any value to
Yeah.
your customers.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make them more successful and by extension MYOB.
So when you talk about problems, do you talk about functional problems or technical problems?
I wasn't being specific, but I suppose both.
Both. Okay, so if both can apply, does that mean that technical work can have and process work can have value?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So show of hands here. Of you, like I know a few of you aren't developers, but that have had a conversation with a product manager or a BA about what the value is to the customer about the work that you're working on. Okay. How did that go? Was it like, hey, why are we doing this?
I spoke to Janine, so yeah.
Okay. Was it? How did that go down? Was it sort of like backing Janine into a corner and saying, "Hey, Janine, why the fuck are we doing this?" Or was it like, "Hey, help me understand"? How did that conversation go?
It was more like Janine asked me, so what are you even doing? No, that was a joke, I think.
Okay. Was that a joke? No. No. We're picking on Janine. Just
Okay.
so. Yeah, that's cool. It's a job as a BA, so it's cool. No, just kidding. It's actually not a job of the BA. That conversation usually goes pretty badly. It's like, we don't see the value in doing this. We don't know what we're working towards. Why are we even here? Why are we even fucking doing this? Blah, 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 fuck off, right? Again, we are professional software developers. As professional software developers, that conversation should go, hey, the value isn't immediately apparent. I acknowledge that you're also struggling to get the value. Let's work on this together. How many of those conversations have you had in your crews? Okay. We've gone from like 80, 90% to about 10%, right? So that conversation is broken. Understanding that value and having a healthy conversation around that. So let's flip this around. When you're talking about technical improvements and process improvements, more so technical improvements, have you spoken about value? Show of hands. About half. Has the product manager or the dev manager or the BA told you, hey, we don't see the value in doing this? Yeah? All of you? Yeah? Have you said to them, hey, we don't either, but we know it's important, so let's figure it out together? Yeah? That's really important. So I think the one thing that is missing in our teams is this balance between, hey, we actually own the software that we're building in the same way that the product owner owns it, the same way that the BA owns it, the same way that the QA owns it. We're all in this fucking thing together, right? And that for me is actually the most important thing about software development, especially at MYOB, is that all of these things are important. Like, and that list can go on. Someone said coffee. Yes, coffee is on that list as well. Electricity is on that list as well. Shared understanding is on that list as well. Communication, whatever. That list can go on and on and on. And depending on when you speak to someone, that list will be different. But the one fundamental thing is that we all own the software together. And I'll share a story with you. I call it developer psychosis. Psychosis is defined as a severe mental illness. Yeah, it's about right. But I think there's an intrinsic belief in the way that development teams operate that make development teams think of the world as an us and them thing. It is us, the developers, fighting against the world, the business. It's bullshit. It is us, the developers, working with them as business, whether the business includes or excludes a product group, or whether business is sales or support or marketing or whoever that is. It is us working with each other to build these products. And the way that we view ourselves influences the way that we approach that conversation. So if we see ourselves as subservient, with our hat in our hands, as the outsiders, then we're always going to be in a position where, hey, there's not enough time to make these technical improvements. Hey, there isn't enough time to make the process improvements. Hey, there isn't enough time for growth. Hey, we don't understand why we're doing this work. Right? So the reality is it is actually not the case. In any modern software company, the development teams are the majority of the people, right? We are expected as professionals to make really, really good decisions about the software that we build. So how we engage in those conversations really can put us on the front foot. What do you guys think about that? The mic drops now.
Drop the marker.
Yeah.
It's actually you spin the wheel. Professionalism speaks to encompassing all of those things, though. It's a skill set, right? You have to
Yeah.
value all those things.
Yeah. Well, we're all in this together. We are professionals.
It's quite loosely defined.
Yeah. Well, fuck. Let's just keep it a blank slide. That was sunrise from at the top of Ladies Bay. Yeah. Yeah. You only get them around this time of the year because the sun comes up pretty late. The premise here is that we're not the little poor kid begging for food, right? We are professional software developers, and as professionals, we have ownership of the products as much as all other stakeholders have. And the reality is, as professionals, we know that we'll do a better job if we understand the why. We know we'll do a better job if we clean up the code. We know we'll do a better job if we invest in our development. But let's engage in those conversations constructively. And that's how you also make your environments better. And that's how your hands will go up a lot more on the technical improvement stuff and the process improvement stuff and the growth stuff. Okay. That said, I think MYB does a lot of stuff really, really well. That gives you the ability to achieve a lot of this stuff. We operate with very high autonomy. Like, people is at the forefront of how we operate. There's immense amount of leadership development going on. So all of that stuff should give us an environment in which we can flourish. Okay, but that's it. Any questions?
So quiet.
It's sort of supposed to be. So thanks everyone, and yeah.
Thanks everyone for coming to Martin Braubeck, and thanks Martin for his beautiful presentation. So if you're interested in doing a Braubeck, please talk to me, Karen, Ashish, or Jordan. We have one Braubeck on the 2nd of August in October, and then one early retrospective, I think. Maybe the next one. And then that's September.
And Darsha's one.
Oh yeah, and that one might be moved, so I'm not sure.
It's
Book now.